Ivy and Gecko acknowledges the traditional owners of country throughout Australia, and we pay our respects to elders past, present and future. Welcome to Hearts and Minds. Our podcast episodes feature conversations with highly accomplished mining executives and board directors. We'll explore critical themes relating to leadership impact, staff engagement and culture development. So tune in, enjoy the conversations and prepare to be inspired. I'm Alana Bray-White, the Managing Director of Ivy and Gecko, and this is our podcast, Hearts and Minds.
The small explorers are the lifeblood of the mining industry. If you don't have those explorers, because at the end of the day, it's 1 in 1,000 projects that actually make it right through the system and come out as a project.
1 in 1,000?
1 in 1,000.
Wow.
There are different levels and they start to drop out at those different levels, but it's 1 in 1,000. So those small explorers are making no money to start with. You know, they're raising capital along the way. So you think you need things or policy incentives to keep them in the hunt.
Our guest today is Tania Constable, the Chief Executive Officer of the Minerals Council of Australia. With a federal election just around the corner, our mining industry is facing a critical moment. What happens next will shape investment, jobs, and the industry for years to come. There is no better person to cut through the noise than Tania. At a time when global competitors are moving fast, the MCA is working to secure policies that keep Australia's mining industry strong and competitive. But there is also a story of hope, particularly in how young people are responding. The next generation is increasingly engaged in the future of mining, recognising the industry's role in innovation, sustainability, and securing Australia's economic strength. Before leading the MCA, Tania was a CEO of CO2 CRC, a global leader in carbon capture and storage research. She has also held senior executive roles in the Australian government, advising on oil and gas regulation, mining policy, and energy development. Her distinguished career has also included serving as the Australia's Joint Commissioner and Sunrise Commissioner for the Greater Sunrise Project with Timor-Leste. We were thrilled to welcome Tania to our studio, and we hope you enjoy this episode.
Tania Constable, welcome to Hearts and Minds.
Great to be with you, David.
What a delight to have you here, and thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
It's a fantastic opportunity, and I'm really privileged to be here.
We've had the privilege of just listening to you at the WA Mining Club. What a great and fiery address, I thought, from you, and I'm still shaking a bit from your performance. How did you find it?
I really enjoyed it. I think I was with a crowd of miners, but we also had a fuel tax alliance there, so we had fishers and farmers and the pastoralists and people from the tourism industry, ex-board members. So that was a bit intimidating. Ex-premier in
Colin Barnett.
Colin Barnett, yeah. So that was great, and a lot of people came out. I was overwhelmed that there were so many people there.
You pulled a big crowd, and what a venue it is, the Optus Stadium.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
That stadium must be incredible to watch sport. I haven't watched anything there, but I've heard a lot about it.
I'd like to talk about your background shortly, your earlier years and how you got started in your career. But before I do, congratulations on the event that you hosted to Fraser's in Kings Park. And I've had a good look through that careers guide you've called Prospect. And I think it's such a good initiative. And I often think that many of our clients, the junior to mid-tier mining companies, don't do enough to participate in the education of young people about what mining's actually about and the role it plays in our communities. So well done. I thought that was a really good initiative.
Oh, thank you. We think it's important to make sure you've got information about the industry, and we work in partnership with the state chambers around Australia, here in Western Australia, the Chamber Mines and Energy. But the Minerals Council look after the tertiary careers and universities. So we've created this for students that are specifically in high school looking at, well, what do I do next? And you've got to showcase those jobs that are available, those careers that are available. And I was saying last night in the launch of Prospect that we've got careers that are spanning pretty much anything you can think of as a career, through from the trades right through to artificial intelligence. We've got drone operators. So those that have been gamers can join the industry and have a great time flying the drones over mine sites. So there's really a career for everybody. And what we've tried to do in this one is showcase real people that are out on sites that have come through as students and tell their story. And what we've also done this year, because it's important that you get people to find the right information quickly. Well, where do I go next? It's one thing to showcase a career or a person, but how do you actually understand a little bit more about a particular company or a university? So we've created a homepage that takes, once you get into the end of the booklet, you can go straight to a homepage in the Minerals Council. It groups together companies in particular regions. So if you're in Kalgoorlie, who are the companies that are in Kalgoorlie? And it provides information about each of their emails, their websites. So that's what we've done differently this year.
Terrific. Well done. And it's so important because the tertiary institutions, I'm told, are simply turning out fewer and fewer mining engineers and metallurgists and geologists. The participation rate at the tertiary level is certainly declining. So something needs to be done if we're going to have professionals and executives of the future.
Well, we need hundreds of, we talk about engineers, we need hundreds of engineers coming through on an annual basis. And we were getting down to 10, 20 engineers coming through and taking an interest in the industry. So we're turning that around gradually. Curtin University in particular over here in Western Australia has been very successful with the School of Mines. So University of Western Australia, Curtin University, University of Queensland and Wollongong in New South Wales have been particularly strong around the mining industry.
Tania, as you know, this podcast is really targeted at people in the mining industry who have a fascination for people at the leadership level, whether those people be board directors or executives or senior managers. What we like to do in this podcast is not so much talk about the technical aspects or the financial aspects of their mining business, but explore with them and ask them to share their experiences and insights about leadership behaviour and the impact that has on stakeholder engagement and culture development. So the focus is very much on how do people extract more valuable and productive relationships at work. And the hope is that people who are listening to this podcast or watching us on YouTube will take away some learnings and apply that to their own situations. So given that, and before we do look at your background, it's hard to ignore the politics of the day. The federal budget has just been handed down. The federal election is weeks away. So we're very interested to get your take and your assessment of the status of Australia's mining industry given the current government's policy settings, and how well positioned you think the mining industry is to address the challenges that seem to be looming ahead for us.
Well, this is an industry that has a comparative advantage for Australia. It's the industry that makes the money for Australia. It's over $400 billion in export revenue. We last year paid $77 billion in taxes and royalties. It's a significant contributor to taxes at a federal level, and I think that is taken for granted. We have had, I think, a torrid time over this last 3 years in particular, it seems to be policy after policy that the federal government has thrown at us, poor industrial relations outcomes. There's been assessment and approvals that have been the government has been trying to legislate, and they're not environmental reforms that work for the environment. It's just more red tape being added, and we don't think some of it's necessary. It's not that we don't agree with environmental reform. I think that it's been shown that the industry actually are really good environmental stewards.
Yes.
That's been proven in a lot of the work that has been done, but we have been standing up for against regulation where it just hasn't made sense. You don't need a national environment protection agency when you've got state agencies. That's just a duplication of effort.
Yeah.
So industrial relations, the taxation's too high, energy prices are just completely ridiculous for every business across Australia. They've just got out of hand, and the environmental approval process. So they're some of the policies that have just been stacking on one another, and it's just created poor investment conditions for our industry. So that's the message we've been trying to get across to the government and the opposition and all of the independents that are contesting this federal election.
Many of our clients, Tania, are junior companies. They're explorers and project developers, and we also have some mid-tier producers as well, particularly in the gold sector. And as an observer looking into the mining industry, I'm disappointed that a lot of these junior exploration businesses are not as well supported as they should be by the government. And with some of the producers, I think particularly of the McPhillamys project of Regis Resources, which was, the subject of a Section 10 ruling, which really set back that organisation in terms of its next major project. So I'm hearing a lot from our mining community clients, a lot of frustration, not only in terms of the over-regulation of the industry, but a lack of empathy, if you like, for the exploration businesses which are necessary if we're to have the miners of the future.
The small explorers are the lifeblood of the mining industry. If you don't have those explorers, because at the end of the day, it's 1 in 1,000 projects that actually make it right through the system and come out as a project.
1 in 1,000?
1 in 1,000.
Wow.
There are different levels and they start to drop out at those different levels, but it's 1 in 1,000. So those small explorers are making no money to start with. They're raising capital along the way. So you need things or policy incentives to keep them in the hunt. And we were really disappointed in the budget only a couple of days ago not to get the junior minerals exploration incentive up again, because it terminates on the 30th of June this year. So we're going to have nothing for the small explorers coming out the other side of an election. So they have to wait until the next budget. So we're trying to advocate very strongly. We'll continue to advocate very strongly, and we're hoping others across the industry do the same, because we want to see some sort of election announcement that will cover that off, coming from both the government and the coalition in their election campaigns.
Yeah, some of those statistics are a bit alarming. When you compare Australia against other jurisdictions, for example, Canada or South Africa, that have very strong gold industries, how does our support for the junior exploration businesses and the regulations, how does it compare with other jurisdictions?
Well, every jurisdiction around the world has their own concerns and about what the policy environment that they have. But let's look at Canada, who is our direct competitor. They have it's very similar conditions to what we have in Australia. They're able to get projects on the ground much more quickly than us. So they have about half the time it takes to get a project on the ground compared to Australia. They've got better policy conditions as it relates to exploration. They've got a junior flow-through share scheme, and the junior minerals exploration incentive was it was put together with that in Canadian model in mind, and it's not exactly the same, but everyone has aspired to that Canadian model, so they're way in front of Australia on some of those policies, and they must be beside themselves at the moment that we're putting more hurdles in our miners' way because they're going to end up going to Canada, and they are. Yeah.
Some people might argue that whilst Canada accelerates the process to get companies into production more quickly, they might show less care and responsibility towards Indigenous communities or environmental protection. Is that the case, or what's their track record like?
I don't believe so. They have good partnerships in Canada with Indigenous people. I think there's always concerns and tensions when you have any partnership in community. But I've met a lot of Indigenous people coming from Canada. They've come out and visited Australia. We have been involved with Indigenous people. We have a partnership with our counterparts over there in the Towards Sustainable Mining initiative. It's a Canadian initiative, and what it looks at is a number of protocols which help guide the mining industry range of issues from environment through to climate change to water management. There's a whole range of protocols. So we have done that in partnership with Canada, and we've been learning from Canada. But as part of that initiative, what was found in Canada is if miners were signed on to that particular initiative and were following the protocols, then Indigenous partners and others within communities were much more trusting of the miners themselves. So there is this mutual obligation that has occurred in Canada that I think we have learned from. I mean, we do some things that very well in Australia, but we've learnt from the way that they've managed their partnerships, which is not perfect, but they're still doing very well.
So there are lessons to be learned potentially from looking at peers in other jurisdictions. Tania, tell us a little bit about your earlier years. You've mentioned you're a supporter of the Manly Sea Eagles. Did you grow up in New South Wales or?
I was born in Maruya, New South Wales, and idyllic coastal location, a couple of hours south of Canberra. My mother's family were dairy farmers, but that's a hard industry. So we moved up to Queanbeyan, right beside Canberra, and I spent my formative years between Queanbeyan and Canberra. And I think that Queanbeyan actually is the city that really got behind the Canberra Raiders early on. So followed the Manly Sea Eagles quite young. The Canberra Raiders came into being. So everybody that was in that region that followed rugby league had to follow the Canberra Raiders. And, of course, I married a footballer. My husband was a Canberra Raider, mostly reserve grade, but he did play a game with first grade. And some of my friends, of course, are still involved in rugby league.
I bet you were on the school debating team.
Oh, look, I was a reasonable debater, but I was also very shy and didn't have a lot of confidence in myself.
Where has that come from then?
Well, I think that I was always a little bit of a nerd. I didn't get so much into trouble, but I did enjoy. I loved mathematics. You know, people still at our reunions say you were the best kid at long division in 5th and 6th class. You could do it in your head, but I had to learn to make sure that I dealt with people and I think I grew into my roles, and now I don't have any problem with that. But I still like time by myself.
Did you go on to university?
I did. I have studied. I have qualifications in economics. I have international law. I have an MBA. I have an honorary doctorate with Curtin University in Commerce.
Wow, very well credentialed. Was there a point in your earlier part of your career that was a tipping point in terms of directing you towards a particular career path? Was there a moment in time that you thought, I'm going to be a lobbyist or an advocate of the resources sector?
I don't think so. I spent a lot of my career working in the Australian Public Service. I was a Treasury official. I was involved in resources and energy. I worked in social security, education, a range of positions, but senior executive positions across the resources sector and the Treasury portfolio. I loved it. I've got to do some amazing things. And when I first became a senior executive, I was one of the youngest at that time in the Australian Public Service. And I remember my boss at the time, he said, this is really going to change your life. And I think it did. And I've got to do some amazing things. I've got to visit some amazing places. I've been to most mine sites around Australia, the large mine sites around Australia, because you can't do advocacy without touching and feeling and looking at a mine site and understanding what's going on, talking to the people. I've visited some great places around the world. I've been on to oil and gas platforms off Australia, in the North Sea. I've been underground in China into a coal mine.
Was that scary because they don't have the highest safety record, do they?
Well, it was their best mine in terms of safety. They were learning from Australia at that stage. So yes, it was, but it's fascinating to do something like that and find out how things work. But at that time, I have to tell you that I met with some other senior executives that were leading the delegation with counterparts from China. One of the Chinese Minister of Mines said to me at the time, we would never have a woman running coal in China. And I sort of sat back and I just smiled and I thought, well, yeah, I am very lucky to be in Australia, but I've taken that particular line that, and I thought I'm going to be the best person I possibly can be, the best regulator I can possibly be in Australia, and make sure I do it properly for industry.
Yeah.
I think
context changes everything, doesn't it? And you must be aware more than most people of the cultural differences and expectations as you travel the world, looking at mine sites or oil and gas platforms. Different communities and societies have a different idea about the value, the worth of females and certain community types.
Absolutely have seen such diversity in cultures, such differences in the way that I think mines are managed. But there is a common thread. There is usually somebody that has worked in an Australian mine, because we've got the best.
Yes.
I do think we've got the best across the world.
Yep.
So you can see that coming through in cultures. You can see that coming through in the way that safety might be undertaken or that people are dealing with their staff. You can really see that Australian culture. But every culture is different, and some fascinating. I've had some fascinating experiences. One more I'll tell you. In 2005, I spoke at a conference in Riyadh. At that stage, I got off the plane and I was issued my very own burqa at that stage that I was supposed to wear, and I'm glad I did because my luggage didn't arrive the whole time.
You didn't borrow it from Pauline Hanson then?
I didn't. No. I didn't. But as I appeared at this conference, the sheikh at the time who introduced me said, he was saying how progressive they were, that they had a woman speaking at their conference. They had a few in the audience, but I was the only woman speaking in the conference. That was a little bit intimidating, I will say. But again, very proud to be able to do something like that. Wonderful experience. And looking back, I think, it's been some amazing opportunities.
You've mentioned the word diversity, and diversity and equity and inclusion is under threat, it seems to me, in particular parts of the world, including America. You know, we've seen legislation being wound back by President Trump, who's not a fan of DEI practices in both the private sector or the public sector. Are you concerned, or do you think there is a risk that the anti-woke movement will be embraced in Australia and diversity and equity practices and inclusive practices will be watered down?
Well, I think it's proven scientifically that diversity gives you better outcomes. You get better decision making, and I see that certainly even in my own board within the Minerals Council of Australia. We've got men on the board and we've got women on the board, and they bring different views to the table. They bring different views from their companies. They bring different views as individuals. And I think you need that in decision making. You need that tension of those different views coming through. So I think that Australia will run our own race, and there's no doubt that what other countries are doing might make us examine where are we at with specific policies. But I don't think it's going to change the direction of ensuring that there is diversity and inclusion occurring in Australia. If we don't have inclusive practices, then you miss out. You miss out on the opportunity to have those I think that different decision making views.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think unless there is a diversity of point of view around the decision making table, then you tend to encourage an echo chamber around you, where the only people that you listen to are people that have the same view as yourself. And I think when I look at politics around the world in recent times, I see more and more of democracies, including America, heading down that path of being almost an autocratic political system where freedom of speech is constrained, and anyone with an alternative point of view is either dismissed as a crank or just not heard. So it's a worrying movement for me around the world.
I think we're all concerned about what might be happening, particularly in the United States. There's a little bit of a rebalance in how far things have gone, and perhaps having a re-examination of some of those policies is a good thing to make sure that we are going in the right direction. But as I said, I think that Australia, having women involved in different industries, we need more women in this industry, and I think there's great opportunity for that to occur. And I believe that we will see the best coming through. There's no doubt that if people are coming into any job, it needs to occur on merit. You need to get the best people in the job. And as I've said to somebody only a few weeks ago, I will defy anyone saying that the people that I know that have come to the table, women that have come to the table, are not the best person to be in their job. They haven't got the job because they're a woman. Yep. They've got the job because they were the best person for that job at that time.
Yeah. And it's great to see the inclusion of Vanessa Torres on your board. I spoke with Vanessa yesterday, and she's a such a talented, decent woman. And
She's fantastic.
yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Halo Civil Engineering. Halo is a multidiscipline civil contractor that specialises in the delivery of complex civil projects across defence, infrastructure, energy and resources. A West Australian company committed to delivering dynamic solutions with a focus on zero harm, while having a positive impact on their industry, clients and the people they serve. For more information, search for Halo Civil Engineering on socials or visit halocivil.com. As the only executive search and leadership consulting firm to be admitted membership of the Minerals Council of Australia, Ivy & Gecko is uniquely resourced to advocate for the interests of our exploration, project development and mining clients.
It's my view, Tania, that people typically rise to leadership by being good talkers, but in order to remain and stay in leadership, you need to develop the art of being a great listener. And it seems to me that a lot of people are not good listeners. There is a lot of conversational narcissists out there who will quickly turn a conversation into a monologue about them and their point of view, and they're not really empathising with the situation and the point of view of someone else. Listening to you speak on a number of occasions, it seems to me that you have developed the art of being a good listener, and I'm wondering if you can share any trade secrets or habits that have enabled you to be a good listener.
It's really important that you do listen as you're moving through your career. It doesn't matter who you are. I think if you are able to listen to another person's point of view and see that other person's point of view, you always get a better outcome, whether it's through negotiation or making a decision. If you don't listen properly, then you miss that opportunity. So I've always tried to do that, even if I might be thinking ahead and thinking, well, what where do we go next?
Yeah.
Sitting back and listening is, I think, very important. Sometimes it's a bit uncomfortable. People, I might have a discussion with a group of people and I'll sit there and I will just listen to their point of view. It becomes very uncomfortable because there's no space being filled. But once you've done that, I think that playing that back, making sure that you've understood it well enough, is something that I think, again, is always appreciated by whoever you're talking with at the time, whoever you're having a discussion with. And when you've got that imbalance between staff and, me as a CEO in particular now, having listened to a person's point of view, particularly if they're not happy about a situation, a decision that's been made, or they're concerned about something that has happened to them, if they get that time given and they think that you have listened to their point of view, if a decision has been made then that isn't necessarily or doesn't necessarily go their way, they won't be happy with it, but there will usually be more acceptance. Not always, but most of the time.
It sounds easy in theory. I would imagine in your job where you're dealing with a lot of political identities of different colours politically, many of them would be very excitable and ideological in their mindset. It must be difficult and challenging and frustrating at times to try and find a compromise solution with some of these people.
When you walk in and you deal with anyone, it doesn't matter who you're talking to. Politicians are no different. You've got to understand what makes them tick. So I will never walk in to a discussion unless I have done more homework on that individual or that group than they will ever do on me. So you've got to be prepared. You've got to know what is going to grab their attention, and they'll always have an interest in something. There's always information with the internet now. You can find out about a person and, again, what they're interested in. And it doesn't matter what it is in our industry. There's always something that anyone, whether it's the Greens and who are, say, they're supportive of critical minerals, or it might be a Labor minister that has a real interest in something to do with industrial relations, labour, or it might be the coalition in, the something where they might have had an individual might have had somebody that worked in the industry if they don't know much about the industry. There's always something that you can use as a hook to keep their interest. And I think that's important, that you find that common ground on issues before you even go into a meeting. So I try and do that before I go in. I don't always come out thinking, oh, that meeting went extraordinarily well, but again, there is respect that at least you understand where they're coming from.
It's a very good point. Let's talk a little bit about culture development. Culture is perhaps an overused term these days. Everyone talks about the culture of a business. Is there an ideal end state for a culture, particularly of a mining business or businesses generally? What does a good culture look like, do you think?
Well, a good culture you need to make sure you understand what your purpose for being there is. And I think every mining company is going to have a different purpose. Every company is going to have a different purpose. So the first thing is to make sure that that whoever is working in that company is aligned with that purpose. If they are not, then they really should not be there, because it becomes a transactional issue for that individual. They'll never be happy working in a company that doesn't meet their own values. So understanding mission, vision, values in an organisation, I think, is important. And I was only reminded of this issue a few weeks ago. We do staff surveys, and a couple of people said, we don't understand the vision, mission and purpose of the Minerals Council. And I thought, I haven't actually talked to people that are new in the organisation about where we might be going as an organisation, why we're here. You talk to external stakeholders about that. So it was just a good reminder that you've got to keep reiterating what you're about. And I think that's important to get, again, everybody on the same page, moving forward on trying to make that organisation the best organisation it possibly can be.
Yeah, well said. We did some research 18 months ago, Ivy and Gecko, looking at a collection of mid-tier ASX mining companies, and we looked at values that were found to be important by executive level, management level candidates. And we found that, provided, of course, the bills can be paid in terms of having an appropriate remuneration package for the candidate, what they really valued was a community-focused purpose that was bigger than themselves. And those companies who proved to be most effective in attracting and securing Australia's best mining talent were those that could curate an employer value proposition that addressed that community-focused purpose. Companies like Evolution Mining and IGO in particular, according to our survey, were companies that really sold an exciting, compelling vision about what they were in business to do. So as a recruiter for the mining industry, it's so important that companies get that EVP messaging correct.
Well, Ivan Vella, who is the CEO of IGO, is on my board, and again, a board member that I highly respect. He really knows what he's doing. He really makes sure he looks after staff, and so I understand that purpose and values are aligned.
Yeah. When you look at IGO's website and you look at the values that are published, very often in companies you'll see values like accountability, transparency, honesty, performance. IGO has a set of values, one of which has always stayed with me. Run through sprinklers is the messaging. In other words, they're appealing to people, let's have some fun and excitement and run through a sprinkler. It's the imagery associated with that is part of the reason, I think, despite IGO going through some challenging times of recent years, that's part of their communication to the marketplace and to the candidate population. It makes a difference.
I like that.
Yeah.
My staff would literally think that I wanted them to run through sprinklers, though.
Do you make them do that if they're not performing very well?
No, very hoses.
Listen, you talked about AI today at the WA Mining Club address. I'd like you to just talk about what you consider to be some of the key risks and benefits of AI for the mining industry.
The risks that are being talked about quite a lot at the moment, safety risks and cyber risks, and that privacy about people will be, will get out there and be used inappropriately. That we will see fraudulent activity occur, and I think that's all true. So we've got to focus on regulation and using AI properly. But I think that can also stifle innovation somewhat. I get a little bit frustrated because I want to see AI open up the opportunities because if you want to be competitive, you've got to get ahead. You've got to get something that will actually take you to the next level in terms of innovation. And I believe AI is going to get us there. So I would rather make mistakes, not to the detriment of the company or the industry, but make mistakes because we've had a go at something new. So I want to see AI. I think we've got great opportunities to use AI in regulation.
How so?
Well, I was telling a story today. Again, one of our team came back. He had done a little bit of work. He'd created a podcast. It was a 20-minute podcast. It took him 4 minutes using Minerals Council briefing material. Yeah. He input that into a program and came up with a podcast of 2 American voices talking about the benefit of mining. And I went, whoa, that is fantastic. Now I want you to go away and look at, well, how do we look at the assessment and approval process?
Right.
So he thought, oh, mad woman, she sent me off on an impossible task again. Anyway, he did it. It took him 30 minutes. He came back and he had created a set of recommendations on a project. He'd taken a project, had unpacked the project, looked at the legislation behind the project and all the jurisprudence that had come from regulatory material and court cases.
So this was a real project here in Australia?
This was a real He just did the real project.
Okay.
Unpacked a set of recommendations on what you would do to regulate that project. Now, if we can do that, we can take that to the next level. We should be able to get assessment approvals down to an hour.
So, Tania, you're saying that the quality and accuracy of those AI-generated recommendations would have been comparable or even superior to the full-blown human process of doing that?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
I think I'm saying you could do years on the basis of the quality of data, but there's a lot of data out there, a lot of material that looks at environmental assessments in regions. If you put all of that information in, you've got the legislation, you should be able to get the information coming out. It's the verification process. It's the human interaction that takes the time.
That will be music to the ears of so many project developers at the moment.
This is my new project. I'm going to get this one done.
Wow. It's that time of the podcast, Tania, where we have a bit of fun with some rapid-fire questions. Sometimes they're not all that rapid-fire, as it turns out, but let's have a go. When you think about people who've shown great leadership, whether that be in business or sport or the creative arts or politics, who do you think of as a person that you most admire and why?
Can I have 2?
You can have 2.
Dr. Fiona, what she did with the Bali bombings and what we saw in the the innovation of spray-on
Yes.
human,
Wonderful. Yeah.
it was just that showed us what is possible, and I still am in awe of her as an individual. Again, I'll use another football analogy. Wayne Bennett,
Yes.
he has been successful across rugby league. He has won 7 grand finals from 10 outings. He has, won that with a few clubs or 2 clubs, and has participated in others. So what he has been able to do on the field and off the field in terms of his leadership and people following that and becoming successful leaders themselves. I think sport's a great equaliser.
Yes.
I think that's why it's so important to have kids in sport. I think they're two that I think I have always admired.
Yeah, look, I can understand your choice, both of those. Wayne Bennett, I read a bit of his biography, and I think he sees himself as very much a builder of young men as opposed to being a football coach. So he takes a human being, looks at their on-field and probably more so their off-field experiences and heritage and upbringing, and like any good psychologist or social worker, helps that person realise their own self-worth. And once you believe in yourself, you become far more valuable to other people. So
I agree.
Good choice. What's a non-fiction book that you've found very valuable as you've navigated your own career and developed your leadership skills?
Oh, there's one above all else, Sun Tzu, The Art of War.
I don't know about it. Tell us.
So Chinese general a few thousand years ago, so I am a bit of a history buff too, but I think that what that book showed me was, there's a great line in it, know thyself, know thy enemy. So this is about preparation.
Right.
It teaches you strategy. It teaches you about people. It teaches you about negotiation. It has a great historical element that you can look back and say, wow, that occurred that long ago, and yet it's relevant.
Still relevant
today.
Yeah.
For me, reading every leadership book, but given my personality too, people probably won't be surprised about, the use of the word war in there. But I do think that's something that I think has been just a fascinating book that every now and again I return to. It's not all that big, but it's a
Tell us the
great
name
read.
of the book again.
The Art of War.
Is it commonly available in bookshops?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes. It's one to read.
I'll look
I'd
it up.
like love your opinion after you read it.
Yeah, I'll let you know. What's an unpopular opinion that you hold?
Depending on who you talk to, I have a very firm view about energy and the use of all energy types. We have, I think, the coal industry has been demonised. The gas industry has been demonised across the world. We should not be focused on particular technologies or energy sources. We need to be focused on how we reduce emissions. So you can use all of that energy. It's about how you actually take the carbon out of those energy sources to reduce emissions. So I won't back away from that, because I believe that that's something that I think energy security, we've seen a bit of a rebalance. Climate change is real. There's no denying the science behind that. But in terms of energy and how we use energy, you've got to have reliable, affordable and low emissions energy for our planet. But you don't have to remove energy types to get there. And in fact, we're not removing energy types because we've got more people that require more energy. And I think that's not well known, not well understood. I won't back away from it. I will just say we've got to do a better job of it.
So we need more pragmatism and less ideological thinking.
Definitely.
Yeah. What's the best career or business advice you've been given?
The best career advice I have been given is to make sure that you back yourself. If you've got a view after you've done all the research you can and you still think you need to go in a direction, then you've got to back yourself to do it. Those that don't are the fence sitters, and they're usually not going to be all that successful in life. So I've always made sure that I've done that, and importantly, I think it's led me to where I am today.
What's a daily habit or routine that you've got into that kickstarts your day and that you think might be of value to other people?
Know what's going on in the world. I read the papers, all of the major papers at 5 o'clock every morning.
There's a lot of bad news there, isn't there?
There's bad news, but there's good news stories too. You've just got to know what's going on, particularly in the job I do, on politics, what's happening around the world, what the commentators are saying and what politicians might be thinking, and importantly, community out there that write a lot of letters. So read the papers and read them well. That's the first thing I do.
What advice would you give your 25-year-old self that you think would help you lead a better quality life?
Lead a more balanced life. I have always been a workaholic. I think I do lead by example in a lot of things, but I don't take enough time to smell the roses, to enjoy the successes. So take a step back and not be don't see work as all encompassing. Take a little bit of time out and just enjoy those successes. I'm still not doing a great job of that, but that's what I would have done at 25, which I think would have placed me much better where I am today.
Good advice. Final question, and I think Tim McMillan, the MC of the Mining Club event, wanted to ask it but didn't. Maybe he was too scared to. When your term is up as CEO of the Minerals Council of Australia, will you take a break or will you get straight into running for federal politics?
I haven't had a holiday for since I've been in this job, a real holiday. So the first thing I'd do would be to take a few months to enjoy that. But I will never go into federal politics. I like what I do and I like working with politicians because I do think that most of them do it for the right reason, to make sure that they're making a contribution to public life and to their communities. So you've got to admire that because that's what a good democracy is all about. But you won't see me as a federal politician.
There you go. You heard it on Hearts and Minds. Tania, you've been a wonderful guest. Thanks so much for spending time with us.
Thank you for having me, David. It's been a great delight.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Hearts and Minds. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a rating or share it with a friend. And don't forget to follow us and connect on social media for updates on all of our upcoming guests. I'm Alana Bray-White and I look forward to you joining us for our next episode.